So, good afternoon, everybody. In a couple of hours, I'm going to be going to AEW Dynasty at Rogers Arena in British Columbia. And I do want to mention that I really enjoyed my time in British Columbia. My first day that I was here on Friday, I went to Jam Cafe, and it's considered one of the best breakfast places in all of Vancouver. I had the Elvis pan waffle, which was bacon and peanut butter sauce and banana all together, really. So I really, really enjoyed that. And then later on Friday, I went to Joe's Deli and I had spaghetti and meatballs. If I have time, I will go back there and try their meatball sub. And then also, too, I went to a place called Oku Izakai Sushi in Gastown. And definitely the best sushi that I've had in my entire life. Like when I was picking, I couldn't use chopsticks. I had to pick it up by hand because it was so big and everything like that. It was really, really enjoyable. And I went to Gastown at nighttime. I saw the steam clock, and then I also went to a 24-hour bakery. There was a lot of, sweet sweets there, and I really enjoyed it. It was really, really awesome. And then I also went to Graffiti Alley, and I saw a lot of really beautiful murals. One was of a Clockwork Orange. There were a few Super Mario murals. There were a few murals of dragons. It did break my heart because this was in East Hastings, so you saw a lot of homeless people there. You saw some people with a lot of mental health issues. So I gave somebody $20 American to help them out. I work a lot of hours at my hospital job because I want to put a good in the world. I want to help people. I want to atone. So I have extra cash on me. I can just help somebody out, and I'm happy that I did that. I went to the Vancouver Lookout, and I saw downtown Vancouver. It was very beautiful. Vancouver definitely reminds me a lot of, Seattle, Denver, Newark, New Jersey, Albany, New York, and at nighttime, Cheyenne, Wyoming, because it's just really how dark and quiet it is. But it's definitely a very, very beautiful city. Oh, and it also reminds me a little bit of Buffalo, because I remember when I took a train across America, we passed by Buffalo, and Buffalo was pure black with just city lights in it, a lot of city lights against a really big black sky, really. So it definitely reminds me of a lot of cities. I really enjoyed myself. And this is also one of the dream cities I've wanted to visit. So, I encourage everybody, get out there and travel. Really, life is enjoyable when we do good to ourselves and we do good to others, and we have goals like traveling or other goals that push us to see and experience the world. I really enjoyed my time in Vancouver. It's definitely a very beautiful city. There's actually 6 matches that I really, really want to see. First match is FTR versus Cope and Christian for the AEW Tag Team Championship. Definitely this is going to be a really great grudge match. I definitely want Cope and Christian to win because, FTR has kind of been getting kind of boring, so they need a new direction with the tag team titles, and there could be some really good dream matches with Cope and Christian. The next match is Moxley versus Ospreay. Ospreay puts on a lot of really great performances. I feel that Moxley has been improving as a wrestler. It's usually who he wrestles with that's very helpful. The other thing about it is Moxley usually does a lot of blading, a lot of bloody spots, but I'm proud he's not doing a match with a bunch of hardcore stuff in it, because just like with Darby, there's just, repetitiveness. So, these are 2 wrestlers that do care about quality. And the next match I want to see is Andrade versus Darby Allin. If Darby Allin wins, he gets a AEW Championship contendership. That means at Double or Nothing, he can face MJF for the title. Again, I'm very proud of Darby Allin because, this is a match where he's not doing, or it's not hardcore, no DQ, or to be super bloody or stunt theatric. He does a lot of that, and I'm okay with Darby Allin doing that and Moxley, but if you do that all the time, you really have to say, okay, are you an AEW wrestler or a Combat Zone Wrestling wrestler? I appreciate the self-control of not having that. And then also, Andrade's been in a bit of a career renaissance, where he's been doing a lot of really great stuff. Darby Allin does a lot of really great stuff with death matches and outside of death matches. So it's 2 people who are very passionate and are about giving their all, really. So it'll be really excellent to see what they can do. The next match I want to see is the Young Bucks versus Okada and Takeshita. Takeshita is definitely one of my favorite wrestlers. Blue Thunder Bomb is one of my favorite moves. Okada is also a really great wrestler, and the Young Bucks are good. These guys have a lot of really great chemistry, and definitely, Takeshi and Okada, they're very technical wrestlers. They're also really good about when you wrestle with them, it's not super flippy or theatrical like the Young Bucks usually are. Really, like sometimes when you have a very theatrical wrestler like the Young Bucks or Kenny Omega or Will Ospreay, they're usually good when they wrestle veterans who are like, okay, you can do a little bit of that but not too much of that. The next match is Jericho versus Ricochet. I think this is a really great match of a veteran wrestler in Jericho and Ricochet, who's a very flippy wrestler. Um, and, it's going to be interesting, clash of styles. I also think that another good thing is that they're trying to make Jericho a babyface, and I think that's actually good for him in this stage of his career because he has to work towards a, retirement at 55 years old. It'll send the crowd home happy. And then also the main event is something I'm looking forward to, MJF versus Kenny Omega for the AEW Championship. Again, this is going to be a really great match. I am also happy because Omega is another wrestler that's great with death matches, but this is not a death match. And then also last month they had the Texas death match, so we need to kind of just take a little bit of a break, especially since next month is Double or Nothing with Anarchy in the Arena. So it's okay to have a card with no death matches because next month you're gonna get into that. And then also Revolution main event was a death match, but it's gonna be a great match, a lot of high endurance. Going for a long time. Kenny Omega looks like he's close to retirement, so definitely this is a swan song. There's a lot of people predicting that he's going to win, and then there's a lot of people predicting MJF's going to win. So it's going to be a really interesting, who's going to win this, So I'm going to go to the Rogers Arena and tell you guys, how this, motherfucker of a show is going to turn out. Underrated. 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 So I just came back from AEW Dynasty, and definitely this is the best Dynasty pay-per-view that they had out of all three events. And I really felt like, a lot of what AEW has been doing that's made the show a lot better is that they've improved the World Heavyweight Championship picture. So it doesn't feel like, it being thrown together. And then they've also worked really hard on making a lot of people matter on the show. That usually that's the best professional wrestling, when everybody matters. I'm not going to review all the matches on the card because, this video would be like an hour long or something like that. But I'm going to talk about the matches that I did like. One of the matches I did like was a Casino Gauntlet for the TNT Championship. Like, a lot of people have been saying that Anthony Bowens has been standing out, and I definitely really agree that he's standing out. He had a really great performance, and I've never really seen him wrestle this well. Like, it seems like he has like this drive, really. So I really think that he needs to do a lot more backstage promos. He needs to talk a lot about what it means to be in this company. I know a lot of people, as Russell Toddy joked about that, the big thing about Anthony Bowens is that he mentions that he's gay, but he needs to kind of do a little bit more than that. Like, he needs to be more like, okay, you know what, why does winning a championship mean something? It can't just be before LGBTQ. It has to be maybe self-belief. Or I think he mentions that his mom or grandmother means a lot to him, so he needs to maybe do it for like a family honor or something like that. Like, what more is there to Anthony Bowens if we want to push him? The next thing with that match is that when you throw Bandito into this, it definitely is a really great match. And then I think with everybody in this, they could all be part of the TNT division. And that's kind of my hope, really, to say, okay, some of them, like Rouge, is part of LFI. Speedball Mike Bailey, Kevin Knight, you don't know if they're going to go back to actually a tag team. So I really think that if you say, hey, you take all these wrestlers that are in this, match, and you kind of have them face, the winner, who the person who won the TNT Championship, Kevin Knight, I think you'd have a really great division, really. And that's kind of my hope for it. And Kevin Knight obviously won, and I would say that I was a little let down because it's very, very predictable. I do think they're very high in Kevin Knight, but I think that maybe Kevin Knight's supposed to be the Leon Slater of AEW. Like, Leon Slater's a wrestler in TNA wrestling. He's been getting a lot of really great spots. He's been the X Division champion. He's been featured on WWE, SmackDown. And then AJ Styles has talked about, Leon Slater having a future. I even said to myself that AJ Styles should do one more match in TNA, like him and Leon Slater for the X Division championship. But I think what they're trying to do in AEW is they're trying to make Kevin Knight like their counterattack to Leon Slater. So that's kind of how I feel about it. But he's definitely putting a lot of good work. He had a great match with MJF. And Swerve is telling Kevin Knight, you got to have a heart of a killer and to survive in this industry. So you could even see Swerve versus Kevin Knight in the future. There's a lot of things that you can do with Kevin Knight, even like him versus Speedball. So I'm happy that at least they're giving it to somebody that can lead to future matches. The next match, I think my match of the night was the Young Bucks versus Okada and Takeshita. And this was a really great match because, like I said, that sometimes what happens with AEW is that when you take wrestlers like the Young Bucks, who are very flippy and theatrical and they do a lot of really crazy moves, sometimes it's good to pair it with people who are veterans. And usually when I consider veteran wrestlers, people who have been wrestling for a very long time, or people who have been former world champions. Honestly, Takeshita has had a lot of really great matches. He's mentored people. He's actually the New Japan. He was the New Japan Pro Wrestling champion. Okada has been, I think he's held multiple IWGP championships, but the match worked very well, and it was a very strong match because honestly, Okada was being a smartass, and there was some comedy in it, but it worked for Okada's character. Takeshita did some smart-ass comedy. It worked for his character. Okada and Takeshita at the beginning were getting along, and then at the very end, Takeshita turns on Okada, and that's the way to go, really, because they're going to face each other for the International Championship. Don Callis could even say something because you guys lost, whoever loses that match is out of the Don Callis family, and they're going to get banged out. And that's a term that gangs use, meaning that, you get ass whooping when you get out of the family. So there's definitely what I really want with this Takeshita Okada thing is a lot of just let's move it forward. Let's not just keep delaying this. And I think that needs to be the stipulation. The loser gets kicked out of Don Callis family and they get banged out. I think that would be a really great way to kind of wrap this up. But it was a good match, won a good duration. There were near falls. Everybody did their special moves. It was something very enjoyable. The next match that I enjoyed was Jericho versus Ricochet, and again, it was a veteran wrestler. Jericho really hyped the audience. I think he did that a little too much. Like he's kind of saying like, "Hey, people are into me," but I felt that it got to a point where it was a little repetitive, where he was trying to cheer up the audience. Um, but ultimately, Jericho, like did the lion salt. He did a lot of other really cool moves. Ricochet finished the match by doing the lion salt on Chris Jericho to send a middle finger to the audience. So I really think I like this transition that they're trying to do. They're trying to make Ricochet the new big heel of AEW. They're really trying to tell the audience, hey, Jericho's not a heel. A lot of people were really upset that Jericho lost, but I think it was actually, I didn't like him losing. But then I changed my mind afterwards. I said, yeah, you have to, because you can't make the show very predictable. Because a lot of times with AEW, a lot of their winners and losers are very predictable. But I was predicting Jericho to win because they don't want to pull WWE, because WWE always has usually the hometown heroes lose. But I was very surprised to see Jericho actually lose this match. The next match that I also enjoyed was FTR versus Edge and Christian. No, I know some people call him Cope, but I'm so used to calling him Edge. But Edge and Christian, it was a really great match. It was like a grudge match. There was a lot of near falls. There were some spears. Stokely interfered, but not too much. They also did something where Stokely accidentally attacked FTR, and then they were just breaking down in communication. So they're trying to show maybe Stokely's involvement with FTR is reaching an ending point. But it did upset a lot of people, and even me, that Edge and Christian did not win because they're the hometown heroes. And as some people were saying online, why bring these people back when they're actually going to be losing matches? It doesn't make sense. But I think that what I'm predicting is that it's going to be Edge and Christian versus FTR versus Young Bucks tables, ladders, and chairs match at AEW Wembley Stadium. I think that's going to be when they either retire or whatever, really. But I think that's when Edge and Christian are going to retire, or they're going to do one more, like early epic match, really. I think that's how they're going to go out. But I also feel a little bad because I think Edge, Christian, and FTR and the Young Bucks, they've not really helped the tag team division. Like, Edge and Christian have been away from the tag team division for a long time. I think Edge was doing some filming for a while, and Christian Cage, I'm not sure where he was, but he had a little bit of an injury, but Edge was out for a while on injury, but then he was out for a while on just filming. I think he was doing a Viking documentary or something like that, and then, the Young Bucks, they were away for a while, just so people would miss them, so they can come back as baby faces. And then FTR has been with their dumb comedy, really. So I really think that they need to kind of get to a point where they're saying, hey, you know what about the Rascals? What about Okada and Takeshita? What about the Don Callis family? There needs to be other tag teams except for these three tag teams, because they've not been doing the best that they can, really. So I think FTR holding it is kind of a bad thing, and I also kind of worry that it's going to be about these three tag teams when they have like a plethora of tag teams. The next match I really enjoyed was Andrade versus Darby Allin. Definitely it was a really great match, because really what you saw was like Andrade was using a lot of hard-hitting moves on Darby Allin, like throwing him into the ring ropes and on the edge, and then on guardrails, and then on steps, and they did brawl a little bit in the crowd. I'm not a fan of brawling into the crowd, because like I said, in AEW there is a 10 count rule, but they have this stupid rule in AEW, which is that if a match is very important, the 10 count is suspended, and that makes no sense at all, really, because no other company does that. You don't turn it into a false count anywhere match randomly. That's something that I really, really, really don't like. But overall, it was a really good match. Again, I'm very happy because Darby Allin stayed away from. Yeah, he stayed away from weapons and other things like that, and hardcore stuff. But it was a really good one. It showed that he really has some grit to him, and he's really dedicated. And then Andrade loses, but it doesn't really hurt Andrade in a way, really. I like that they shake hands at the end, because it kind of says maybe Andrade's going to turn babyface, get out of the Don Callis family, because you never know that could happen. Is Moxley versus Ospreay. There were things about this that it went on a good duration. I don't think Moxley bleeded in this match, because he usually bleeds every single match. And also with Will Ospreay, He was really like hard hitting. He was more like a brawler in this match. He wasn't that like he wasn't really like an AJ Styles type of wrestler where he was like very flippy or doing too many flips or whatever. Really, he did some of it, but he kind of knew that the story of this match was that he wants to beat the shit out of Jon Moxley for putting him on injury, and that was the right thing to do, really, because obviously, where does high flyer and theatrics kind of go into that type of thing? No, it doesn't really. There are some matches. I think like the first year Osprey was in AEW, like when he had to was Osprey to Takeshita Osprey. It was like Osprey, Bryan Danielson, and other matches. I think that was when Osprey was trying to show more of what he could do, so he went like above and beyond. But I think at this point he needs to pick and choose his moments. But here he really said, I'm mad at Jon Moxley. I want to beat the shit out of him. I want to take it too far. I want to be more like a brawler. I want to hit him with hard-hitting moves. And that's what a professional wrestler does. That's what a good professional wrestler does. There's times when you wrestle like Mick Foley. There's times when you wrestle like Rey Mysterio. And then there are times where you wrestle like Kurt Angle. And then there's times where you wrestle like Mark Henry or Big Show with the powerhouse stuff. There's certain times when you have to pick a style based on your match. That's what a great professional wrestler does. A bad professional wrestler is somebody who always does the same old shit, really. Like, lack of a better example, like I like the Dudley Boys, but throwing somebody in a table every single time is not wrestling, really. It's just a gag almost, because you're not changing your styles. And with Ospreay, I think for a very long time he'd always been Mr. I'm going to do flips and sky twisters and other things like that. I'm happy he didn't do that, because it shows that he knows how to have some self-control. The other thing that I will say about this match is that Moxley won. I was very surprised, because I think a lot of people were expecting Ospreay to get his vengeance, but it was also good in a way too, because they were going to have the Owen Hart tournament soon, and you can't, and as I said for many, many times, you cannot do something where you have wrestlers hold multiple titles. Like, why would Kyle Fletcher with the TNT Championship, Kevin Knight with the TNT Championship, Okada with the International Championship, FTR, like Dax and Harwood, why would they be participating in the Owen Hart tournament, going after the heavyweight championship when they already have a title on them? That kind of does not make a lot of sense, really. So I think it was a brave decision to have, it was a very, very brave decision to have Moxley actually win. And it says, hey, you know what? We know people are predicting Ospreay, and we know that it probably makes more sense for Ospreay to win and just make closure. But that's not what happened. And then also, too, he won clean. He did not, cheat or whatever. And I appreciate this. This is not Robert Roode in TNA wrestling. Because when Robert Roode was the TNA champion, he always cheated every single time they had a match. And even though he was a heel, it gets to a point where that cannot always be the ending, where it becomes a gag. But yeah, it worked. And then the last match I want to talk about is MJF versus Kenny Omega. It was a great match. It went a very long time. Unfortunately, I started to fall asleep during the match. And like I said, that this is kind of one of the issues with AEW. They really have to get to a point of saying, can we start doing shows that end at midnight? Can we do some shows that end at 11:30 even? Dynasty and World's End. No, Dynasty, World's End, and Wrestle Dream need to be shows that need to be shorter. They need to experiment with shorter shows. I think even with Ring of Honor, they need to experiment with shorter shows, but they have such a big fucking problem in making the shows too long, because I've never heard of a pay-per-view. Most people don't hear about pay-per-views ending at 12:30 or 12:35. Most people hear about pay-per-views ending at midnight or even at 11 a.m. or 11:30, but it's just too damn long because you're going through all this stuff. And there's reasons why I try not to even attend the 0 hour. I do my best not to attend those anymore. And I know for Tekla, Jamie Hayter, I got food during that match, because I was kind of like, you know what, a man's got to eat. But also the other thing too is that it was just getting a little too boring, really. And then it's also hard to focus on a match if you're going to watch 12 matches and then you have one at the end. Because there is, and some people were saying that in the audience, so this is too long. When is this going to end, really? And that's never a feeling you want to have. It's like the Demon Slayer movie. it's good, it's epic, but sometimes less is more. Sometimes an hour less or half an hour less or 45 minutes less can do a lot for AEW. But this was a really great match. Again, I'm very proud of MJF. I'm very proud of Kenny Omega because they had the self-control not to make this a death match, or if they were in Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling. They have the self-control not to do that, and I really appreciate that. I also really appreciate that, but there's only one bad thing that they did. They had the table spot, and it's like everything I've said, that you can't do table spots in matches. If it's a hardcore match or a no rules match, that's appropriate, but you do not do something like, say, hey, we're going to have MJF deliver a pile driver to Kenny Omega through a table, because it does two things. It says, okay, rules get suspended in AEW, and that's actually really bad. What it says is that rules get suspended in AEW, and that's really bad because then it says the show they do whatever the hell they want in this company. Like, rules don't matter, or breaking rules don't matter in championship matches. It's more about entertainment than following some rules, and that's not good professional wrestling. That's just that's a stunt show, and that's not what AEW should be. It has to be, hey, MJF puts Kenny Omega through a table, no DQ, no contest. The match is going to either be restarted, or they're going to continue on another show, or MJF loses the title because they need to have a champion that doesn't resort to those tactics, really. Because I know in Ring of Honor there are rules like that, or sometimes in WWE they had rules where if somebody ends it with DQ, a championship would change hand. They've done that sometimes, but that's not good, really. But it was definitely, there was a lot of spectacle to it. One bad thing about the match was there's a lot of just, I think Kenny Omega almost botched or slipped a few times. There were some points where it looks like they were trying to get in position to do a certain move. I know that with most wrestlers, they try to not wait until somebody, they tend to not wait for another person to get in the right position. But there was a lot of times in this match where I think they're trying to do a flip or move around a little bit or throw somebody or do a suplex or other things like that, and it kind of felt like oh well, are you ready for this position, are you ready for that position? So it wasn't it was very botchy. It was a very, very botchy match, but overall it was still very passable to me. I really enjoyed it. It was better than the match that we had at Mohegan Sun, the one that I saw like a couple of years ago. But definitely too, they both really care about this show, and as I said before, that it was definitely a great pay-per-view. I would say that the positives, in my opinion, was number one, there were no hardcore matches. Number two was that there was a lack of blood on the show, because they always rely on that too much. So it shows that, hey, we don't need to be like Combat Zone Wrestling. Next month you have Anarchy in the Arena, so that's when you have a lot of chaos and violence, really. So it makes a lot of sense to show the self-control. The next thing that I would say is that I appreciate some of the matches being unpredictable as a positive, and I also appreciate them working very hard to build towards these matches. And I also appreciate that they're working very hard to build the heavyweight championship division, instead of just like where it was last year, where it felt very like thrown together. But there are some weaknesses of the show. I think that the big weakness is that it was way too long of a show, and they're running into the pattern of it ends at 12:30. The other problem with this show is that I felt like, there were some storylines that need to die, like FTR being the tag team champions, that needs to die. I would say that Ospreay and Moxley, Moxley in charge of the Death Riders, that needs to kind of die. That's been going on a little too long. I think that having Anthony Bowens without direction is something that I don't like. And Takeshita Okada, that really needs to end at Double or Nothing, because that's been going on way too long, and that's appropriate. I also appreciate that there's surprise winners of this match, and I wasn't expecting the trios titles to change. I was not expecting Kevin Knight to win the TNT Championship. Part of me was, but I was like thinking to myself, that's still something different because the most predictable thing would be to give it to Ciampa or Mark Briscoe. And I also appreciate that Mark Briscoe is not in the TNT Championship match because I think with Mark Briscoe, again, you have to do something a little bit different with him. You can't always be going after the same titles. So overall, I think that this show was very strong. I really appreciate it. It was a great investment of my time to come down to Vancouver and watch this amazing pay-per-view. So, I have to edit this video and then 5 a.m. I have to head to the airport and go back to Lickety Split, Connecticut, and then in a couple of weeks I'm going to be going to AEW Double or Nothing, and I'll see what the future looks like with the other AEW pay per view shows. I want to keep on going to all the events that I can, even though money's getting a little bit tighter for me.